Welcome, I'm Gary Ralston, and today we're going to talk about population and population growth. And why would that be important? Well, it's important because real estate is space for people. So more people is wonderful for our business. And the headline today, Florida is the fastest growing state. Let's go right to the website from the census, which made that announcement. Florida is the fastest growing state for the first time since 1957. This is a historic milestone. And when we think about the growth, our current population in Florida of 22,244,823, that was as of the end of last year, that is 9 times the population in 1946. Florida has been a consistent top gainer. We've always outperformed the nation, even during recessions and other problems in the economy. Let's take a moment and focus a little bit on the overall population. I really like the population clock that the census does. It gives us the world population so we can see kind of in context how we fit in. The world is now approaching 8 billion. It's 7,947,600,000 and change. And you can see it notes the top countries there, of course. The United States is the third largest. China and India way outposition us as to the numbers of people. The U.S. population, as of the moment, because this clock is interesting, it updates every minute, is 334,311,818. And if we stayed on the page a little longer, we'd see 19. Let's focus for a moment on this page. It gives us the largest states. And Florida's the third largest. California is 39 million, Texas is 30 million, and Florida's 22 million and a quarter. I'd like to now go to the census quick facts for a moment, which allows us to maybe drill down and do some comparative between these states and see some of the issues. You can see the population as of the end of the year for each. As I mentioned, California is a little over 39 million, Texas is a little over 30 million, and Florida is essentially 22 million and a quarter. And we can see some information about where the census was, and that allows us to do some interesting calculations, which I consider sound bites. Between 2010 and 2020, Florida grew by 764 people a day, which is very impressive. But now, over the last year and a half, Florida is growing by 1,142 people a day. Let me say that again so you can remember it. 1,142 people a day. Let's look at some of the distinguishing characteristics that the census quick facts breaks down. It gives us some information about age, which is good to point out. Persons over 65. You can see that Florida is substantially higher than the other areas. The country is about 17%. Florida is over 21%. Texas is much younger, and California is a little in between. One of the other things to take a look at, of course, is building permits. Look at the growth in building permits. 213,000 building permits in 2021. Those turn into structures in 2022. There were more structures started in Texas, but remember, Texas is 30 million. They're almost 50% bigger than we are. So our growth in housing, although it's impressive, frankly, is still lagging what's demanded by the increased population. Another good point to look at is the transportation, mean travel time. In the United States, the average travel time to work is about 27 minutes. Florida is almost 28 minutes. What does that mean? Well, it means that if it takes longer than 28 minutes to go from one point to another, it's what we call a broken linkage. And on a local basis, that's the explanation why Lakeland and Winter Haven have not grown together. It takes 30 minutes or more to travel from Lakeland to Winter Haven. We would be a different world if Interstate 4 went through downtown Lakeland and downtown Winter Haven. Another point is median household income. And of course, remember that median means half or more, half or less. The country's 69,000, California's 84, Texas is 67, and Florida is a little less than 62,000. Well, you would look at that and say, that's not good. However, keep in mind one of the data points that we featured before, over 65. So what happens in many geographies is as the population ages, their current income tends to decline. It becomes more investment income and less earnings income. However, that is more than offset by accumulation of wealth. So the assets of the population in Florida exceed on a per capita basis the assets in the other states we compete with, and of course in the United States. Let's now look a little more closely at the geography that we live in. I've taken the liberty of creating some charts here that gives us what we call our market. This is Central Florida. We're really looking at 5 counties. On the east, Hillsborough, Polk County's in the middle, and then of course Lake, Osceola, and Orange County. This we call Central Florida, and interestingly enough, this geography is about 20% of the population of Florida, but it accounts for approaching 30% of the growth. So we are in the hot spot, Central Florida. We see some other data. It gives us the median age across the board, and you can see that it ranges. Orange County's the lowest, of course, and Polk County and Lake County are a little older. It gives us the income. When we look closely at the median household income, we can see that Osceola is at the bottom, followed by Polk, and then of course Lake and Hillsborough and Orange County being the highest. The activities of tourism in Orange County have a very positive economic impact. And then we see the age, the groupings. It's interesting, as we made the comment before, in Florida, there is a higher concentration of over 65 than in the country, and you can see that distribution amongst our counties. Polk County follows along very much with Orange County follows along very much with Florida in population distribution. Orange County's younger, and so is Hillsborough County, interestingly enough. Let's look for a moment at jobs, economic drivers of what's going on in our growth. And this gives us the percentage of workforce. It's essentially done on non-farm or establishment survey employment. The percentage in each of these industrial classifications. I'm pleased to report that across the board, for the most part, government in Florida and in our key counties here is lower than government employment in the United States, and that's good. We like to think that private driving is a great thing. It's interesting to see Polk County in retail trade. Our retail trade employment is substantially higher than the United States and also higher than our surrounding counties. And you say, well, why is that the case? That's an interesting kind of economic calculation that results from something that we call labor shed. Labor shed is the difference between household employment and establishment survey employment. In essence, where people live and where they work. In the case of Polk County, for example, about 48% of the people that live in Polk County don't work in Polk County, and there are 90,000 people that don't live in Polk County but do work here. So not only does that cause problems on I-4 that we all get to experience, but it creates some interesting inconsistencies, and retail trade is one of those. People tend to shop where they live as opposed to where they work. So Polk County is a big beneficiary of that, and we're pleased to support that activity. We talked about the importance of population and why it's important. I'd like to conclude with that highlight that real estate is space for people. More people means more demand for real estate. So it's good. And we're pleased to share that message with you. You can continue to watch the websites that we mentioned here and monitor them to see how that growth is going to continue. Thank you.